1 year ago, Parkland shooting. A group of students in the aftermath seized the attention of the nation, saying never again. Well, there has been again. Joining us now, friend of the show, Igor Volsky, to talk about what we've learned in that year and what we might have to look ahead. Igor, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. What have we learned this past year?
Well, we learned that when people organize and when people push and demand for change, they can have a big, big difference. I'm not just talking about the results of the midterm elections that pushed dozens of NRA-backed lawmakers out of office, but we're also in a place where at least 40 companies have broken ties with the NRA over this past year. We're also in a place where you have young people for the first time saying that gun safety is the #1 issue they're going to vote for and they're going to vote on. It's the top concern for them.
Yeah, pause there for a second, Igor. Is there, I mean, for a long time, the political dynamic, setting aside money for a minute, but the political dynamic was a majority of the people would be in favor of, say, universal background checks, but they did not value that more highly than they valued other political issues. Whereas the NRA voter, there were lots of bullet voters, and pun intended, one-issue voters. How, in terms of the people who say this is my top issue, have you looked comparatively about where that, who has more, or relatively speaking, if it's still many more pro-gun, single-issue voters, by what ratio that they are in the majority, or they outnumber single-issue gun safety voters?
Well, I haven't seen new polling on the single-issue question, but you're absolutely right that historically speaking, right, you had gun owners who had an entire identity around what it meant to be a gun owner, that they were far more passionate about the issue, both in the voting booth, but also in the way they gave money to organizations they supported. That is certainly changing. I mean, I don't have a number for you, but I think it's certainly changing because when you look at what young people care about, when you look at the general population, support is up, not just for background checks, as you mentioned, but also for bolder reforms, things like gun licensing, which is very popular with young people, things like gun buybacks, the general idea that we need to build a future with fewer guns, that we have too many guns, right? That being as the kind of the top goal of everything we're doing and the long-term goal that we're building towards. All of that is significantly increasing, and at the same time, you have the NRA, A, losing revenue, B, spending less in political elections than they had in the past, and D, facing trend lines that are really, really dangerous for them, at least, right? Because we have fewer and fewer people owning guns. They just own more guns. That's a problem in and of itself. But also, you certainly look at younger generations, and hunting is really no longer a recreational sport. Young people and others really have little interest in guns. So all of this says that on this issue, we're moving in the right direction. The question is, how quickly can we get there towards a world with fewer guns, and how many lives can we save in the process?
What policy accomplishments have happened? Do you have a quick litany of things that have happened at this, let's say maybe the state level, or heck, at the federal level, since Parkland in the past year? And I know the list is not as long as you'd like it to be, but what are some things that have happened?
Well, significantly on the federal level, you saw just yesterday the House Judiciary Committee pass a universal background check bill out of committee. It's going to move to the House floor. That's significant, and that's a good first step towards building a future with fewer guns.
Would that get a hearing? Will that get a hearing in the Senate? Will that get a floor vote in the Senate?
It's going to be up to Mitch McConnell.
That's why I asked my question.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't know. Okay. I think that given the fact that he's up for re-election, I think it complicates things. Yeah. So that's on the federal level. On the state level, we've seen tremendous progress. 67 bills have become law. since Parkland in this past year. Most of them deal with what's called an emergency risk protection order, which allows an individual to petition a judge to take guns away from a person in crisis for a temporary period of time. Those laws have already saved lives, and it's great to see them kind of expanding around the country.
Where are we falling short?
Well, we're falling short by not taking the same kind of bold approach on guns as we do on other issues. So, you know, progressives are now talking about a Green New Deal. They're talking about single-payer health care. They're talking about closing and shrinking the income inequality gap through taxes on millionaires and multimillionaires. But when it comes to guns, we still don't have that kind of big, bold goal.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we talk about incremental steps, right? Background checks and assault weapons. All of these things are important tools, but what's the organizing principle? And so a lot of what I do is define that organizing big, bold principle as fewer guns. And the reason for that is because you look at all the research domestically, internationally, it all shows without a doubt where there are more guns, there are more gun deaths. And to really deal with that problem, we have to be upfront with what we want. We want a future with fewer guns and where guns are harder to get. And I think all of our lawmakers and all of our politicians who are aspiring for higher office can really, you know, I encourage them to adopt that kind of approach. Because, hey, you know, this is a time when folks are talking about big, bold solutions. They need to apply the same kind of logic to guns as well.
If we thought about our choice of big picture policy slogans on three vectors, maybe I'm missing some, but on three vectors. One, that it would really make an impact, that would be effective. Two, that it's doable, that we'd actually have a chance to do the thing that would make that impact. And three, that it's inspiring. Right, healthcare for everybody. It's like, oh, I'm one of everybody. I could get some healthcare. That's cool. And we know it would actually have impact on lots of people. And the question is how doable it is. At least it's 2 out of the 3, and then the argument becomes around that third thing. For your fewer guns, where do you think it scores on those 3, or which do you like? You know, which motivates it? Is it because you find it inspiring? Do you think it's the most doable, or you think it would have the biggest impact if it were done? You've been at least making the case around impact.
Well, yeah, I mean, the impact is huge, and we know this from experiences in the states that have tougher gun laws, certainly internationally. I think, look, in terms of slogan, is it inspiring? I think it is. Can people brainstorm other bold slogans around this? Sure. But I talk about it in terms of fewer guns mean safer communities, mean safer movie theaters, safer churches, safer schools. The list goes on. And ultimately, that's what we are all invested in building.
Yeah. And I think I hadn't thought enough about this. In fact, there's a really helpful insight that you offered, that identifying that bold line, that bold underlying principle that people can organize around, that's some work still doing. The thing I do like, you know, speaking for myself, what I do like about it is that by process of elimination, I'm thinking it's the others, like gun safety or gun control, or each of those. Well, maybe all I have to do is turn my safety on and put my gun in a lockbox, and maybe that doesn't have anything to do with making sure my church or making sure the movie theater is safe. But Igor, where can people find out more?
GunsDownAmerica.org for more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. We'll be back. This is the Thom Hartmann Show.